Austin, you grew up on.
I grew up on a lot of the stuff you had your hands in, man. A lot of this stuff. Max Steel, me and my sister used to watch that before going to school. And not this new Max Steel stuff. The OG.
Max Steel classic.
Going turbo, man.
Yeah.
Oh, we used to go sick. We used to go crazy, man. But you know what? I was thinking about it because I know you've had a hand in like Star Wars Rebels, and even I know in like other interviews you mentioned how you started off working at DC for quite some time too.
Mm-hmm.
Taking a DC angle, starting with that. I mean, from when you started working at that company, even as an editor, and then to where DC's currently at right now, even just in general media, what kind of changes have you seen? How do you feel about DC today as opposed to how it used to be?
I mean, I started at DC in 1983 when I was 19 years old.
That's awesome.
And I was a freelance writer, and the guy who ran, I mean, the publisher was Jeanette Kahn back then, but the guy who ran editorial was this great guy, Dick Giordano, who, in addition to being the executive editor at DC, was also one of the greatest inkers of all time. I mean, literally, ever. Look him up sometime, Dick Giordano. And he was a fantastic mentor. Really great guy. And I freelanced for a couple of years, then I went on staff for a couple of years, and then I freelanced for a couple more years before I was so busy at Disney that I had to give it up. I've worked for DC on and off, I mean, for the comic book side of it, on and off over the years, more off than on. And I did Young Justice, which is a big adaptation of the entire DC universe. I've also written for a bunch of different Batman shows. Bold.
The Batman, I believe.
The Batman. I wrote a bunch of those. And what was that show? Beware the Batman. I wrote those. Yeah. I love those characters. I mean, I love them passionately. I have a very specific take on each and every one.
Yeah.
And if you want to know what that is, go watch Young Justice, because that's where you'll see it.
There you go.
Not that I did Young Justice by myself, but Brandon Vietti and I did that show together as showrunners, and a lot of other people had input too. But everything that you see in Young Justice it has to do with how Brandon and I saw those characters, our interpretation of them. And that's true for Superman, for Batman, for Wonder Woman, for Dr. Fate, for Captain Atom, for Robin, for Superboy. We did hundreds and hundreds of characters across 4 seasons of that show and a handful of comic books and one audio play. So sometimes what I see in the comics, on TV, in the movie theaters, meshes up with how I see those characters, and sometimes it doesn't. And that's okay. It's not like it's always got to be my way or the highway. I don't own these characters, but I feel, I feel a real connection to them, going way, way back again. Not just to when I was 19, because I, read comic books long before I started working there. And so these characters are important to me and they matter to me. And so some interpretations I like and some I don't, and some I really don't like.
Sure.
But, that's, I think it's difficult to please everybody, and B, create something that sort of transcends everyone's opinion about what a character should be when the characters have been around for so long. And when you've got a character like Batman or Superman or hell, even Dick Grayson or something like that. I mean, these characters have been around 80 years. 8.
Yeah.
And that means a lot of writers have worked on them, a lot of editors, a lot of artists. And some of their interpretations are seminal, and some of them are great, and some of them are startling, and some of them, frankly, are god awful. But that's what happens when you've got a sandbox that everyone gets to play in, and where you're going to get a mixed response. And I haven't done any work at DC in quite some time, but I'd always be willing to go back if they wanted me. I don't think they do want me, but I'd be happy to go back and do some work for them. There are a lot of people there who I think are really talented and are doing some great stuff. There are other people, I'm not naming names because that's not what I'm about, but there are other people whose stuff I'm like, yeah, I don't like that.
Not the best.
But, I'm also not the main audience anymore. I mean, I wouldn't assume they're making comics for 61-year-olds. And I understand that. I'm not their target audience at all.
Yeah.
But, like I said, there's stuff I read and I go, I like this. This is good stuff. And there's stuff I read and I'm like, oh no,
not so much.
No. And that's true about DC and TV, TV and DC and movies too, or anywhere.
We've talked about that a few times too over like past episodes, especially when it talks about like the animated movies that have been put out recently, and we take it back and look at the different series that we feel like really kind of like raised the whole generation. I mean, Batman the animated series with Kevin Conroy, that raised the whole generation. Then you go a couple years later, you got Teen Titans, which was a big deal on Cartoon Network, but also I feel like that introduced a lot of people to DC in one way or another. But then you've got good storytelling like Young Justice. There's only like a few series that have actually like had really good storytelling that makes you want to stay connected to it. And Young Justice definitely fit the bill, which is why people were fighting for it years after it was taken off for a little bit.
Yeah.
But then
we
look at the quality. We talk about some of the animated movies that have come out recently, and the quality, although they look great, the storytelling is rough.
Yeah, it's not there.
It's hard to follow.
Yeah, with Young Justice, I felt connected to these characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like even just the small cast in season 1, Robin and Kid Flash and Artemis 6 or so forth. There's a lot of depth to them, even though we already. Well, I should say we knew. For me, at least, being a comic guy, the person I knew the most is Robin.
Yeah,
but
right.
But outside, but you put a spotlight on
Miss Martian.
Miss Martian. I did
Martian,
next to
Superboy,
nothing.
Yeah,
Superboy. I knew Superboy, but as far as personalities, not really until you gave him that, and then expanded more as these guys got older and brought in more of a cast.
One thing that was fun for us is this idea of letting time pass,
seriously,
and letting characters age and letting them mature, letting them grow, some of them backslide, whatever. But the point is that the years pass, we get older. You got a handful of characters like, I don't know, Phantom Stranger or Vandal Savage who don't age. But for the most part, people age. And as you age, you change. What's fundamental about you probably stays the same, but you find as you get older that fewer and fewer things are fundamental, and a lot of it is situational, and it's about the people in your life and who you care about. And I all the shows I do, all the comics I do, I get accused of, your cast is too big. There's too many characters. And I'm like, yeah, but that's life. That's
the fun part, though.
We meet people and they become parts of our lives, at least for a period of time. And then they may slide out, but then every once in a while you want to touch base with that person again. And so characters come in and out of focus in Young Justice. We always, from our point of view, maintain focus on our original 6 leads. Then that dropped down to 5. And we had a couple other characters toward the end of season 1 that were important. In season 2, Blue Beetle was extremely important,
Yep.
not necessarily
Yeah.
as much 3 and 4.
Yeah.
But we always want to touch base with Blue Beetle at least once or twice a season. But yeah, I mean, if you watch Young Justice from sort of episode 1 to where, well, episode 2, I guess, where, Superboy meets Miss Martian, and then you get to the end of episode 4 and they get married. I mean,
Yeah.
they go from being these teenagers and then they're adults and they have jobs, they've grown up. They're not going to high school anymore. They've got jobs. She's a guidance counselor at the high school. He repairs motorcycles,
Yeah.
custom bikes and stuff like that. And that kind of in-depth sort of thing is harder to do if you don't let time pass. And the problem with a lot of comics is that they're incredibly inconsistent about the passage of time. I mean, Batman's had so many sidekicks, and I'm not knocking it because we've used most of them in Young Justice. But the fact of the matter is that for that to play, you got to let Batman get older.
Right.
Yeah.
There's this desire to keep Batman in his late 20s or early 30s, so
Early
he's not
30s,
too old
yeah.
unless you're
In the
consciously
30s.
doing like Dark Knight Returns, and now he's in his 50s and he's got a heart condition or whatever. But for the most part, there's this desire to keep him younger and viable from the point of view of these companies, and that's sort of great. But you try to start stuffing all this history that he's clearly had, because Dick is now somehow Dick got older. He started off as a 9-year-old, and
But
now
Bruce didn't.
he's somewhere in his mid-20s. He's been in his
Yeah.
mid-20s for, I don't know, 30 years now. And then you've got Jason, and you got Tim, and you got
Yeah.
I
guess you got Damien, I guess,
Signal,
too.
and
Yeah.
all these Batgirls and stuff like that. And I'm not knocking them.
Yeah.
I think they're all interesting characters.
Yeah.
But how is it that they keep getting older and Batman's stuck?
I'll say the same thing for Alfred too. I mean, currently he's dead, comic wise, but same diff. He's always, in my mind, late 60s, 70s, but raising all these children. He's still.
I mean, look, when I was reading comics, and this was fine because, again, really old guy here, but Alfred was a young man during World War II.
Yeah.
And now, I'm really enjoying the Pennyworth show, for example. I don't think it's perfect, but I like it a lot. And he's in that show. He's a young man in the 60s. Well, the truth of the matter is that Alfred was an older man when he first appeared in Batman in 1942 or whatever year it was. I mean, so they keep having to adjust when Alfred was a young man. Can't have been a young man in World War II anymore, because wouldn't he then be 104 by now?
Give or take.
So
carry the two.
And that, to me, I think they'd have been better off. This is personal preference, but I think they'd have been better off by letting these characters age and evolving into whoever becomes the next Batman, and continuing to keep it moving like that. But I understand why they don't want to. And again, from a Young Justice standpoint, we sort of set a base year of 2010 as our year 0. And from that point on, our characters aged at a normal rate. But I can do that in a TV series that isn't dependent on continuity from all these other comics. We were creating our own continuity. We were sort of culling what we thought was the best stuff from the books, from all these books, from 80 years worth of DC continuity. We could call our picks. We weren't forced to stuck with all of that continuity. We could decide what we did and didn't want to do. The same was true for me on Spectacular Spider-Man. when I did that in 2008.
My son loves that show. My son loves
Good.
Spectacular Spider-Man.
I'm glad.
He said perfect.
Yeah, yeah. He
Perfect.
he he got hyped when I told him that we're talking to you, and but that's one of the shows that got him through COVID, and 'cause he's a Spider-Man mark. But so thank you for that. Yeah, 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 and that's the thing with Spider-Man too. I mean, now if I remember, you're currently writing Spectacular
I'm
or
writing the Spectacular Spider-Man for Marvel.
Spider-Man. Yeah,
Issue 15 comes out May 14th. I don't know when
is
this episode's going up, but
you know what? This will be out probably
Before
next
then.
week. Actually, next week. Probably by Tuesday, next Tuesday the 13th, and everything. So we will have
so
that up and
tomorrow,
ready.
go out and run out
Go
and
get
pick
it
up
tomorrow.
Go get it, because
Spider-Man number 15.
support.
It's Peter Parker and Miles Morales together. Uh,
Yeah,
it's a really fun book. We've had a really good time
yeah,
uh, in that playground, and uh, it's a quirky title. It's not your,
yeah,
you know, I, Miles has his own book. Peter has his own book or two.
yeah,
Right? So
yeah,
I couldn't sort of. I'm not sort of dealing with their overall destinies. I'm just sort of every
yeah,
Wednesday they get together with
yeah.
coffee, and somehow the shit always hits the fan.
That's how it
It's
is.
it
New
it's
York.
light. I kind of appreciate it because I'm reading it right now too. And when I first read it, I thought it was going to be almost like the Spider-Verse sort of deal,
Mm.
or like a mentorship.
Yeah, I
But it's
figured.
not.
Yeah, I
It's
figured
not that.
really when I first talked to Nick Lowe, the editor, about the book. I said, "Look, Peter's been mentoring Miles for, well, let's be honest, 20 years now, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And Peter's still 26-ish, give or take. Miles is still 16, give or take.
yeah,
Um, but I said, look, I've had a lot of mentors. I mentioned Dick Giordano. There are a lot of other ones um, that I've had over the years, and I've tried to be a mentor to
yeah,
people, and that's great. But at some point, if the relationship is going to continue, it's got to evolve. At some point, that mentor-mentee relationship either evolves into the two of you being friends,
yeah.
or it's not going to work anymore.
Right.
Like, I had a mentor when I was 21 who was 26, and he had been in comics a lot longer than me. And um, and so that 5-year age gap was big
Mm,
when I was 21. When I was 51 and he was 56, and we'd both been doing this kind of thing for decades now.
Long time. Yeah.
And he's still treating me like I'm his, mentee.
That's a little
It
weird.
grates,
mm.
and I've had other mentors who, like I said, the relationship evolved into friendship. But if it does that, or it's not going to work anymore, right?
Right.
And I said, I think by now they can evolve into just being buddies, which is not to say that Peter might not give him a bit of advice here and there, but it's also sort of, one of the things that I had fun with, particularly early in the series, is that Peter's and Miles are hanging out. So Miles and they're
Mm,
having coffee at ESU, at
mm,
Empire State University, which is where Peter went to college,
Yep.
and a place that Miles is thinking about applying to college, right? So for Miles, he's hanging out where there are all these college students, and he's hanging out with Peter, who's 10 years older than he is. And so he is behaving super mature. He's got to be mature,
mm.
right? Because he's punching upward, right? He wants to fit into this adult world, right? Peter, on the other hand, is hanging out with a 16-year-old, which gives him permission to let his inner 16-year-old out, and he's being a complete goofball most of the time. So it allowed us to sort of flip the dynamic. Instead of Peter being the really mature one, always telling Miles, well, you should do this and you should do that. We flipped it so that Miles is the one acting mature, going, would you please grow up. Um, you're making these horrible puns and stuff like, and Peter's the one like, hey, it's cool,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's not that Peter had suddenly devolved. When things get serious, he'll get serious.
Yeah.
But if they're just sitting there having coffee, he can be a goofball. It's all right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
um, so that allowed us to sort of, I think, evolve the relationship forward. And we've had a lot of fun with that. And as is usual, I keep bringing in more and more and more characters to this coffee shop. Because again, that's how life works for me. I think, Nick loved the supporting cast, and by the end of it, he was going, this is insane how many characters are now coming into this coffee shop all the time. But
Do you have to write, I mean, do you feel you have to write Peter and Miles differently? If that makes
I
sense?
mean, I definitely think they've got a different vibe.
Yeah.
You know, Peter, look, this isn't in continuity with the TV show Spectacular
Yeah.
Spider-Man. It's not. This is regular 616. But God knows that, in my head, I'm hearing Josh Keaton's voice,
Yeah.
Peter, and it's got that energy. And Miles, I sort of have Zeno Robinson's voice in my head for Miles, um, and again, it's this kid trying to be a grown up, whereas
Yeah.
Peter was grown up, letting himself be a kid for a change.
Yeah.
Because Peter's life is super serious all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it is.
let me every Wednesday at 4 o'clock. Let me take a break from that and
Can I get
just
some levity, please?
relax.
Yeah.
You know, and uh, and I think, yeah, I try and get both their voices in my head. I obviously know Peter really well. I've been reading Peter since uh, the John Romita Sr. era.
Mm.
And I'd gone back and read the Ditko stuff many times. Not quite old as I am. I'm not quite old enough to have read the Ditko stuff when it came out, but
Mm.
I grew up on the Stan Lee, John Romita Sr. era, and that's still, the voice in my head. And obviously, I don't know Miles quite as well because I haven't been
Yeah.
with Miles as long, but I've been with Miles a long time now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
So I think I've got a pretty good handle on both. It's for other people to judge, I guess, but I feel good about it.
Yeah. No, it's enjoyable because for me personally, I'm not quite on board with the main line right now as far as Spider-Man. So this is a nice alternative. Just lately, just peaks and valleys, as usual when it comes to comic books. So I'm right there with it as far as Spider-Man. And I had to
I mean, it's like I was saying, I think every fan in some way, and I don't mean this literally, but is a writer. You
hmm,
know, every fan of these characters, they've got their, however you want to say it, their platonic version of Spider-Man or their archetypal
hmm,
version of Spider-Man. They've got this vision in their head. And what that means is that some creators are going to be in sync with their vision and they'll love it.
yeah,
And some creators will not be in sync with their vision and they won't love it. Now, sometimes they'll start not loving something and then something will happen in the book and they'll like, wow, that was cool. I did not
yeah,
see that
yeah,
coming. And suddenly they're into it.
yeah,
But, I grew up on Lee and Kirby Thor, right?
yeah,
Then Walt Simonson comes along and you're just like, oh man, yeah, this is like what I've wanted Thor to be without me even ever knowing it,
yeah.
right? Um, Frank Miller doing Daredevil. Every
Oh,
once in a while, you run into someone who just
gets it for sure,
gets
right?
it and does something with the character that
Yeah,
is both new and yet feels like
This is how it should be.
this is how it should be exactly.
yeah,
And that's what any creator hopes to do. But you're not going to bat 1,000. No one bats 1,000. And so the fact that any particular Spider-Man book or whatever you read, the fact that some of them aren't working for you, that's because you do it different.
yeah,
And
yeah,
they're not. finding that mode. But the fact is that, you know, for the most part, I mean, this is, in the internet age in particular, I don't know if you've heard of this internet thing, but it can get ugly, right? You know,
So your
and
comments are off. That's why we keep commenting. Not playing. Like
um,
and subscribe.
so, Young Justice mostly got praise from the internet.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
He did well with the internet for the most part. But there's
Yeah.
always a handful of people, and unfortunately, those are the ones that as a creator you remember the most because they made you sad, who are hitting you pretty hard.
Yeah.
But, and that's okay. I don't need everyone to love everything I do. But the thing that always used to drive me crazy is like, this is why the fans hate the show. And I'm like, actually, the fans are pretty good with the show.
Fans don't hate
Yeah.
the show.
This is
True.
why you don't like the show. And you're
Yeah.
trying to pretend that you speak for everybody, as
Yeah.
opposed to just saying, I'm only speaking for myself, but this isn't working for me. And here's why. And I would
Yeah.
respect that point of view. But when they start saying, the fans don't like this or the fans don't want this, I'm like,
That's not true.
well, our numbers are pretty high, so I'm thinking you're wrong. And unless everybody's hate watching it like you, which doesn't seem likely, so that's, I think, one of the problems today. And I'm not talking about you guys because you're up here, you got your faces on screen, you're using your names and that, but the anonymity of the internet allows people to be ridiculously, just rude. I don't even mean like mean, just rude.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not, I should just be grateful that there's anyone who wants to watch the show, but frankly, I don't need it.
Yeah.
I don't need that rudeness.
Yeah.
If you met me at a convention, the odds are you wouldn't talk to me that way. You still might say, I don't really love it, but you wouldn't be rude about it because you're face to face with a person. And most people, they realize, hey, there's a social interaction contract here, but on the internet, a lot of people do not see that. And, and it's a problem.
Well, there's no need for accountability. That's
Yeah.
also the thing too. They can kind of just say whatever they want to say, and there's no one that's going to be able to hold them accountable, so they feel like they've got the freedom to say whatever.
Yeah.
about
Keyboard
anything.
warriors. Keyboard warriors. Yeah.
Keyboard warriors, man.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. No, I mean that's the thing, because like, look, I mean, I feel like so Young Justice it goes on this sabbatical for years, one season two, and then
Nice way
I
of putting
almost
it. As
yeah,
opposed
right, yeah, yeah. Takes a 6 year lunch, right? And but it's like during that time
Went off
period,
and did a bunch of other shows in between, but yeah.
right? Yeah, but yeah, right. You had stuff, you had to do, right? So for a couple years, but it's like during that time, okay, and people saying, okay, it wasn't really that good. Yeah, it was because we were begging for it to come back,
right.
and then when it did,
I mean, look, when the show first came out, there were
the
a lot of people who
escalation,
loved it, but a handful
yeah,
were like, this sucks. We just want more Justice League Unlimited, or we just want more Teen Titans.
Yep.
And I
but
get
it's
that
not
they
that.
want that, but the fact that they want that doesn't mean that our show sucks,
Yeah, right.
Just try giving it a chance. Then season 2 came out. We had a 5-year time jump between season 1 and season 2.
Yep.
And we got all sorts of people going, this sucks. Why did you do this? We want to go back to the timeline from season 1. When are you going to go back? And it's like, and then, there's this big gap. And now all these people who hated season 2 are going, season 1 and season 2 are great, but season 3 sucks. And it's like, it's the same people in charge of the show. We've got some people who are different on the show, but that's true every year. The odds are, if you just calm down for a second, you might find that you like it. And then, we got the same thing for season 4, where it's like, well, the first 3 seasons were great, but season 4 is woke and whatever that, whatever they wanted to say about it. And I'm like, it's the same goddamn show it's always been.
Yeah. No, I mean the only thing that broke my heart, of course, and it's out of the control. It's just, of course, we introduced the Furies and Darkseid, and then as far as that, what could have been, time will tell. But
I mean,
because
hey,
I
we were
just
gone for 5 years before, maybe 5 years
yeah,
later
Come right
we'll be
back.
back. I don't know.
exactly,
I mean, I'm
and
not
then
I'm not saying that as some kind of tease. There's no
no,
plan
that
to bring it back right now, but you
no,
never know. If you had said to me when we were first canceled at the end of season 2, don't worry, you'll be back in 5 years, I'd be like, yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Right.
But we
Right.
were, you
Yeah.
know.
yeah,
So who knows? Maybe it'll take 6 years this time. Maybe it'll take 10. I have no idea. But I'm still doing Gargoyles comics 30 years
yeah, it's
after the show
crazy.
premiered. You just don't know.
No, I think that's awesome that you're able to continue to tell your stories. I know there's in between there's comics that I think is SLG comics for
Mhm.
Gargoyles, and was Marvel in there somewhere for a time, or did I?
Marvel did comics while the show was originally on the air in the 90s,
Okay,
which we don't count as canon. I think they're good stories. I think a lot of talented people worked on it.
yeah,
Marty Pasco, Amanda Connor, and others.
yeah,
Really good stuff, but it's not, the continuity didn't match up. It just, and that's no
mm,
one's fault. I was busy making the show, so I couldn't
yeah.
really focus on what Marvel was off doing on these comics. So I think they're fun stories. We just don't count them as canon.
Hmm.
And then
But the first 2 seasons of the show, the SLG run, which was 12 issues of Gargoyles and 6 issues of Gargoyles Bad Guys.
yeah,
Now the Dynamite run, which is 12 issues of Gargoyles, 6 issues of Gargoyles, The Dark Ages,
Hmm.
a Halloween special, a winter special, 5 issues of uh, Gargoyles Quest, and now Demona Zero, and the 5 issues of we're doing this 5 issue Demona miniseries, issue 1
yeah.
again. I said this already, but I can't say it enough.
Nope,
Comes
go
out
get it.
May 28th.
Yep, we will
And
put a link.
that's by me and Frank Parr, who we were the 2 original producers on the show.
Nice.
And then
And those
also,
so we think of the SLG stuff
yep,
as season 3, and
hmm
we think of the Dynamite stuff up to this point as season 4, and then we're gonna roll into what we consider season 5
awesome.
as soon as this Demona miniseries is over.
And
Hmm.
then going down the line, just from going on my local comic site, a Gargoyles. Now, did I get this right? A Gargoyles slash Fantastic Four crossover?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh snap!
yeah, yeah. That's gonna be. We just saw Thunderbolts yesterday, so we're all sorts of hype type and everything on lately. So I
I
saw
haven't
that.
seen it yet.
Please see it. Please see it. But
It's
excellent.
Marvel's coming back. They're
Yeah,
doing it.
yeah.
Immediate.
They're
They're doing it.
yeah, yeah. As far as Thunderbolts, or pardon me, Fantastic Four and Gargoyles. I'll
Wow.
take it. That blows my mind. I was
Yeah,
always when I was
I mean, I've written the 2. So they're doing one book. I mean, there was a little preview story in on Free Comic Book Day in Demona
yeah,
Zero.
that's what I saw.
There was a little 4-page preview story.
Yeah,
It's a tease,
yeah,
basically. But we're doing 2 books. I wrote one. I wrote them both, but one was for Marvel. Um, Fantastic Four meets the Gargoyles, and then one's for Dynamite. Gargoyles meets the Fantastic Four. Uh,
yeah,
and they're both really fun stories. They're in continuity with each other,
yeah,
not really in continuity with the Marvel universe or with the Gargoyles universe, but they're in continuity with each other. um,
yeah, yeah.
and and they're just, I think, fun stories. And I look forward to. They're being drawn now. The artists
Yeah.
are working on it now, and they come out in the fall. But
Well,
I look forward to
Good timing.
the readership getting.
no, no. We look
I
forward to
think
reading.
you know Gargoyle clan, Manhattan is sort of the first family of the
Yeah.
Gargoyles universe, and of course the Fantastic Four is the first family of the Marvel universe.
So
So
it makes all the sense. I want to see the Thing and Hudson interact for some reason. Two accents, as far as Scottish accent, Queens, New York accent interact with each other. One last thing, two things before we wrap up. Because speak of crossovers, when I was young, I used to be vehemently against crossing universes. So when I saw like Flintstones and Jetsons, I was against it. But yeah, I was
to
like,
me,
no.
those that makes sense. They're in the same universe. That makes even
Wait,
more sense than Gargoyles.
well, I
Fantastic.
mean, but now I don't really care. Like now this is
Yeah,
great, and like yeah, I'm loving reading Aliens and Avengers
Yeah.
right now too. And now I think they just started Predator and Spider-Man. I'm like I'm there for it. Why not?
yeah.
It's
I mean, look, it's
entertaining and
just
fun.
fun.
It's yeah, that's the key word.
I
As long
mean, if you become so continuity obsessed that you can't,
yeah,
do a
you can't step
one-off
away.
project that's just for fun,
Yeah,
then something,
something's
some
not right.
synapse isn't connecting in there
Yeah,
because
yeah,
have
yeah.
a
You
good
gotta
time with it.
find your joy elsewhere. I guess if that's the case. I mean, one last thing, what we do as tradition for our channel, we always have these, speaking of crossovers, who would win? And so I thought of a fun one that they're sort of similar, but not really. Uh, David Xanatos versus Lex Luthor.
Mm.
Greg, what do you think?
Well, David Xanatos goes up against Tony Stark in uh,
I think I saw
in
that.
the Gargoyles Fantastic Four book that Marvel's.
Oh, oh, never mind. I didn't see that.
Um,
Really?
so,
You heard it first, folks.
so yeah. Um, but but Lex, obviously, that's Gargoyles is owned by Disney, Marvel's owned by Disney, so I can do that
Oh,
cross. The odds of
right,
doing a
right,
crossover with DC with Gargoyles is pretty slim. But
right, right.
you know, uh, uh, I'm a big fan of Lex Luthor. Obviously, we had him in Young Justice.
Yep.
Lex and David are very different people. They've got certain things in common, I guess.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
Lex is in fact trying to um, mold the world to suit his needs,
Right.
Hmm.
whereas Thanatos surfs the world to get
Hmm.
his.
Mm.
So, in a who would win scenario, um, my guess is that Xanatos would be too smart to fight.
Mm.
And
Oh.
he would do some kind of end run,
Dude,
and
that is
Lex is committed to doing whatever Lex is committed to do, and
I love
David
that.
would sort of glide around that and get what he needed out of the scenario. Not necessarily foiling Lex in the process. He'd leave that to the heroes to deal with. You
Yep.
know,
I love that.
at the end
I
of the
love that
day,
response.
David would get what he wanted, and Lex would probably wind up sort of thwarted by Superman or Goliath or whoever he was up
Yeah,
against,
Mm.
because Lex is one of these self-defeating characters anyway.
that's true. That's true. That's
But
true.
uh, David would just glide glide through.
Maneuver. One of my favorite, we'll end it with this, one of my favorite Xanatos lines. He said something like, it was like early in the seasons or something. He was talking to Owen slash Puck, which is great twist, man, by the way. Great twist with Owen and Puck being one and the same. But
Kind
he
of
said,
spoilers.
hey, yeah, my bad. You heard, I'll bleep that.
30 years old, but still.
30-year-old spoilers, but if you're not watching, if that's on you. Right? He said to Owen, he's like, man, I thought I got soft. I fought Goliath. The city owes me an edge. Or excuse me, the city owes me a favor. I'm so glad I still got the edge. He said something to that
Yeah,
effect.
yeah.
And I
He
love
still
that.
got the edge.
I
That's
still
how.
got the edge. Like he thought he went soft, and I that's still one of my favorite iconic Xanatos lines for me personally. Yeah, but no props.
I think that's his thing. He he'll find his way through because he's not interested in changing the world. He's not interested in destroying the world. He's not interested in any of that stuff. He's got certain goals. He wants immortality. He wants a lot of, but you know, the world works pretty well for him the way it is now. He doesn't need to mess about it.
That's so godlike. There you go. Any things to plug in before we get you out of here today?
Again, May 14th, The Spectacular Spider-Man number 15 is out. May 28th, Demona number 1 is out. And then more in June. If what we've been talking about here has intrigued you, but you haven't ever seen Gargoyles, Gargoyles is on Disney Plus. And watch the first 2 seasons there. I think again, it holds up pretty well, except for the cell phone.
There's the big bulky.
Every once in a while, David pulls out a cell phone the size of a brick.
It's like a
most of the time,
walkie-talkie.
Most of the time, it holds up pretty well.
30 years later.
Yeah, 30 years later. So you have to let us slide on the cell phone issue. But otherwise,
don't blast them on the internet and everything, you know, for that and everything. Have some grace. Well, no, and
then we talked about Young Justice. That's available on Max. So you can watch 98 episodes of Young Justice, 4 seasons on Max.
Crazy. Is that long? 98.
Check out my stuff.
Check out his stuff and check out the other stuff too. There's way too much. This will not be. I'm gonna call it right now. This because since Sean's not here, this is not gonna be the last time we're gonna have Greg on. We're not gonna harass him to come on, but we love this too much. Again, you sort of shaped and molded me, Sean, and Austin's. Sean's gonna be so pissed. Austin's childhood and everything. Childhood, and even my daddy texted. He's sort of hyped, and he's literally because he's a huge Keith David fan, so he's watching Gargoyles as we speak. Back on the other side of Connecticut. So thanks so much. It means a lot.
Greg. I am also a huge Keith David fan, so I understand.
The voice of God, Keith David, man. I'm telling you. Please hit the like. Please hit the subscribe. We're going to be leaving a bunch of links below to check out Greg's stuff and shows. Again, please check out his upcoming projects and everything. Austin, I got nothing. You got anything?
I got nothing. It's been an honor and a pleasure, man. Seriously, Greg. Thank you for coming on today.
It's been fun. Thanks for having me on. I'd love to come back.
Well, let's come back. You heard it first, guys. All right. Catch you guys down the road.